Hi. Okay. Will please begin with Gassho, please. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Buddha. Well, you've had time to think about it. Before I get to the very end, are there any points that people would like to have clarified or oh, can I take it off? That is it easy to understand? Okay. I feel more comfortable this way anyway. But yeah, does anybody have anything that they would like to have clarified or be more confused about? If not, to capsulize, what I was trying to explain is that one of the incentives for me to pick this topic was that my main instructor at the Ryukoku University would always correct me, well, not just me, but all of the students that he had, that whenever he talked about Jinen Honisho, he'd correct us and say, Gyakutoku Myogo Jinen Honisho. And like I mentioned yesterday, I thought he was just being a little bit nitpicky, but over the years, gradually, and yeah, just about 4 or 5 years ago, it finally came to me that what he was saying is that Jinen Honisho is talking about, well, we usually translate it as naturalness, but that state of naturalness only comes after Gyakutoku Myogo, receiving the name, receiving and hearing the name Namo Amida Buddha. Only then do you have real naturalness. And I tried to stress yesterday that one of the big problems with naturalness is that in English, when we talk about naturalness, it gives an image of touchy-feely Buddhism, right? Touchy-feely Buddhism. And that's not what's being said here. That naturalness is the natural flow, and then the Shikarashimu is things are made to be, came to be made to do so. And again, this isn't predestination or preordination or anything like that, but it's basically karma. And then that karma flows in a certain way. And, if we try to fight that flow of karma, this becomes hakarai, or self-calculated actions. And that self-calculated actions lead us to, cause ourselves more suffering than is necessary. If we accept what is and see it for what it is, don't try to make it into a form or a framework that we feel comfortable with, then it eventually all works out. And this whole process, one part that was really important about this Gyakutoku Myogo Jinen Honisho at the end of the hymns on the Dharma ages is that he wrote this at 84. So it said that he wrote this at the age of 84. So this is about 5, 6 years before he passed away. So this is way toward the end of his life. And at that time, you were considered an old man at 50, old person at 50. So I think everybody here is on the verge of old age or almost there kind of thing, right? So even though the average age for many people, they were all considered old at 50 or so, Shinran lived to be almost twice that, right? He almost lived to be almost twice that. So his thought developed quite a bit. And there's a bit of a difference between, there are two versions of this Jinen Honisho, this one, the Gyakutoku Myogo Jinen Honisho, and then there's another one at the end of the notes on the Matosho, the last Dharma age, the light of the lamp of the last Dharma age, or they give different translations. But that one is a lot easier to understand because it's a lot less complicated than this. But this is the one that my sensei really stressed to us. And, you know, like I said, after 40 years or so, I finally came to come to understand why he stressed this difference. But what really attracted me to this whole topic, this whole thing of naturalness and all, was the fact that at the very end of this, if you still have your notes from yesterday, at the very end, after we have realized this, we should not be forever talking about jinen. If we continuously discuss jinen, that no working, actually, I think this is missing a part, that no working is the working. It is a matter of inconceivable Buddha wisdom. So no working is the working. The Japanese is mugi igi. The fact that, you know, that the meaning there is important, but then if you're constantly talking about it, it doesn't mean anything. You know, you're wasting your time, is basically what Shinran is saying. You know, the part before that, as the essential purport of the vow, Amida vowed to bring us all to become Supreme Buddha. Supreme Buddha is formless, and because of being formless is called jinen. Buddha, when appearing with form, is not called Supreme Nirvana. In order to make it known that the Supreme Buddha is formless, the name Amida Buddha is expressly used. So I've been taught. Amida Buddha fulfills the purpose of making us know the significance of jinen. So, you know, even say, though we talk about Amida Buddha as being the object of worship in Buddhism, or Jodo Shinshu, which is something I have a pet peeve about. You know, the whole idea of Buddhism is to become a Buddha. If you're going to become a Buddha, can you be worshiping that which you're going to become? You know, that seems kind of weird to me. So yeah, we direct our thoughts towards the statue. But again, what Shinran is saying here is that basically he's saying it's a finger pointing to the moon, right? You want to look at that moon. You don't care about the finger. You don't want to waste your time looking at the finger. If you look at the finger all the time, you're not going to see what it's pointing to. This is an adult group, so I'll share this. One time I was talking about to basically a YBA group, and it's about how this is when, you know, people talk about personal relationships with God and stuff like that. And, you know, if you're going to take that kind of example, what you really want to do is to have a personal relationship with that which Amida Buddha is pointing to. You know, the idea is not to have a personal relationship with the finger, but with that which the finger is pointing to. And I said it just that way, and then everybody started cracking up because, you know, when they talked about having a personal relationship with your finger, they took it the wrong way, which is probably the normal way of taking it. But then everybody started cracking up, and then I had to wait until they settled down. But anyway, the idea, again, is not to look at the finger, right? Is to see what the finger is pointing to. And Shinran here is saying, you know, once you realize that Amida Buddha is pointing to the ultimate truth, then the idea is not to be constantly talking about Amida Buddha. It's not to be constantly saying this about Amida, that about Amida, or anything like that, but to get to the fact that you want to see the ultimate truth, right? And this is where we need to all get to see that our sitting around discussing Amida, discussing the compassion, in many ways is meaningless. This is what Shinran Shonin states, you know, when it's no meaning there. But the fact that there's no meaning there is where the real meaning is, which is a convoluted way of looking at things maybe, but that's the way he expresses a lot, right? This is the way he expresses things a lot. And Shinran is famous, at least in my opinion, for saying things in indirect ways. Very rarely does he say, this is the way it is, right? He'll talk about how, well, like earlier in the Eitai service, I read the quote from the Tanisho, he says, I never did this, right? I never said Nam Amida Buddha from my parents. He talks about how deep inside he's filled with doubts and ignorance. He doesn't point the finger at another person and say, you're filled with doubts and ignorance. And one of the more famous quotes is when Yuyan comes up to him and says, I have doubts about my birth in the Pure Land. And then Shinran says, you too? Meaning I have those doubts too. So he's a great teacher, yes, but he never says, this is what you have to do, right? This is what I did. This is what I am doing. And you can, extrapolate from that. And this is just generally speaking about all, religions and such. But people who tell you, this is the way, this is what you have to do, I doubt that. I always take that with a grain of salt, and I don't really listen to them too well. I mean, I should pay a little bit more attention, I guess. But a lot of times when people say, you're going to go to hell and stuff like that, and said, I've gotten to the point where I say thank you. I'm fine, with that. But this is an aside, but one of the best questions I ever had from a Christian group. This was basically a youth group that came for a temple tour and such. And their youth minister asked me, after all these years, you find out that, when you die, you were wrong, that there really is a God and a heaven and stuff like that. And, how would you feel? And at that time, the only thing I could think of is, again, this is part of the Tanisho where Shinran says, this is the only way for me. If there were another way that I could have done, then I might feel regret. But because this is my way, this is the only thing I can do, I'll have no regrets no matter what happens. Because even though I find out later that Honen deceived me and all the masters and Siddhartha all were telling lies, there was nothing else I could have done anyway. Right? There's nothing else I could have done. So all I can do is accept their teachings, accept what is. And again, this ties into the Shikarashimu aspect of being made to be so, having things come together so it leads to this. So this is what Shinran is pointing to here, that one way of looking at this, I think, is that Shinran is saying, if you're wasting your time talking about naturalness here, talking about Amida, talking about, you're not living your life. You're not, you're worrying about things that have nothing to do with accepting life, accepting the call of Namo Amida Buddha. Just accept and live. So, that working is no working, that no working is the working of Amida's compassion. It's a matter of the inconceivable Buddha wisdom. It's there, it's working on your life. And if you spend all your time talking about it, you're wasting your life. I mean, you're wasting your time. Okay. that basically concludes what I have prepared. So I was asked to leave time for questions and answers. Again, I don't have any answers. I may have questions. So anybody, any of the auspicious ministers out there, or the diligent people who have been listening for 2 days? Yes. People online can't hear you.
If I talk louder, then,
That's good right there.
then I'd have to make sense. It, it brought to mind, the phrase that we often say when we put down to coincidence about encountering someone in an unexpected place, knowing the same people you do. And it's that it's a small world type of encounter would be an example of that.
I think you're talking about the interconnection and how things you come running into people through the karmic conditions coming together at times you don't expect. Is that what you're talking? Yeah, it happens. And like I tried to explain yesterday, those are miracles. Really, they are miracles. We don't call them that in Jodo Shinshu in Buddhism. We always say there are no miracles in Buddhism and such. Yeah, we don't have any great big flashes of light coming and telling us things and stuff like that. But again, just seeing people, just being here, just every morning seeing your spouse or children or parents or fellow workers or neighbors, all of those are miracles, because when you think about it, any two people to come together, an infinite number of causes and conditions have to be just right, right? They all say, well, people always say that the difference between life and death is whether you can inhale after you exhale. Right? It's that paper thin. Just because you exhale and you've inhaled up, how many thousands of times up until now, doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it again. And what is it that makes it happen? You can give scientific explanations that all these things come together in just the right way, but is it something that has to happen? No, but it does. And this is why we're told, we put our hands together in Gassho and say Namo Amida Buddha to express our appreciation for all these things coming together. And we can't go around saying thank you to everything, everybody, all the time, because you're going to miss somebody, number one. And there's a lot of things that we never think about, just like having the microphone here, all the years of technology and research and things that went into just having something to amplify your voice. I don't have to use a bullhorn or anything like that. It happens. People say I don't need a bullhorn because I have a loud enough voice as it is. But that besides the point, all of that comes together in just the right way. And can we explain all those things? Can we go around and say, thank you to all these things? Another term that Shinran uses a lot is fukashi, fukasetsu, fukasho. It's very difficult to explain, to comprehend and to express, right? But it happens. How can you talk about all these things that come together in just the right way and, express our gratitude to all of them? And we can't, because of our limited capabilities, we can't do it. But we don't have to do it because we express our appreciation through the Namo Amida Butsu. We express, Namo Amida Butsu because all these things came together. And for that, I am the beneficiary of all this. I appreciate this. This is that feeling of understanding that has to start developing. And, this is one of those tricky little areas. Once you hear the call, it's complete. But at the same time, your appreciation comes to deepen as time goes on. You come to see and become aware of much more of what's happening in your world, right? So, yeah, those are miracles. The causes and conditions come together in just the right way. And I don't think anybody can point their fingers at and say, this is this led to this, this led to this, this led to this, and this is what happened. It did, and it's really great. And for this, we should be grateful. And then we always talk about being grateful. And one of the things I think about, because Murakami Sensei mentioned that you're going to have to fumigate some of the buildings around here because of the termites. People tend to think of termites as being terrible things. But when you really think about it, a termite, the reason that they're there here on Earth is because they take apart the dead trees in the forest and such to make room for future growth, right? Is it our fault? Was it the termites' fault? They can't tell the difference between a dead tree out in the woods and a dead tree that's building a house, in a house. No, but they have a purpose. They do something. And basically, in the balance of all things, it's a good thing. So that constantly think of a termite as being a terrible, evil thing, it's wrong. This can be said about people too. We tend to think of some people being terrible, evil people, but we can't really know. We can't really know. There's many causes and conditions that lead to people being who they are, things being what they are. But for all of that, we can learn and we need to be appreciative of all of that. Does that confuse you enough?
Regular lives without our fully realizing it, because the phrase is like it's a small world, or right place at the right time, or wrong place at the wrong time. It's all a
yeah, those things will happen, and it's very difficult to explain how it happens, but yeah, be at the right place at the wrong time. Who was that? Is that Dr. John that sang that song? I was in the right place at the wrong time. Anyway, those types of things do happen, and I can't explain it. But all things happen for a cause. We may not be able to see the cause. We may not be able to see the reason, but it does happen. Yes.
I wanted to know if you thought a person's age had something to do with being able to accept what is being pointed at. In other words, it's like when I was young, I don't know what I was thinking. But as I'm getting older, I'm thinking a lot more, and that's why I kind of joined this China temple.
Yeah, I think age is a factor, not just numerical age, psychological age, emotional age. It all comes into play. Some kids are much more mature than some of the older people I know. It comes into play. Some of the best things I learned in the recent past is from the preschool kids in San Jose. And like one time, one of the instructors wasn't there, and I asked, why isn't Sensei here? Well, Mr. Bryan is what they called him. And I said, why isn't Mr. Bryan here? He said, oh, he's not here today. I said, is he sick or something? And they said, no, he just took the day off. I said, oh, that's good. And then they said, why is it good that he's not here? Right? And that's one way of looking at it, right? Why is it good that he's not here? Another time, one of the kids, well, this is when he was a little bit older, his great grandfather passed away. And he and his younger brother came in for service. We had the funeral and such. And then like a few weeks later, they came in for the 49th day service. And then he's looking around and saying, waiting for his rest of his family to come and, watching me set up. And he says, didn't we just do this? And that's true for the kids. It's just like, the same thing is going on all over again. And as adults, we don't ask, what's the difference? Why? But because he's a young kid, and he felt comfortable talking to me, he didn't have any reservations about asking. And so I was able to explain to him and then, to everybody that, this is a process, right? Usually, when you have the makuryō right after a person passes away, as much as possible, this is, some schools of Buddhism say, if you don't do it the right way, the person's not going to go to the Pure Land and stuff like that. Jodo Shinshu really, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter, the body's there or not. What's really important is the people that are left. And, you try to explain and show that this is the time to cry, because those feelings are there and you really don't have the chance to process all those thoughts yet. This is that first step. And then with the funeral, actually, the way the funerals have come to be, I really think that's the worst part of the whole process. It's a big show. Some places do what they call a seizen sogi, or pre-death funeral, so that they can see who comes and how much they bring for koden, stuff like that. It's ridiculous, but it's become a big show more than anything else. The seventh day service, the first seventh day, even if it's more than that and stuff like that, it doesn't matter. This is actually the first step in the healing process, right? This is the first step in the healing process. The show's over. Once you go home after that seventh day service, you're going to be alone. An important part of your life is not going to be there anymore. And you're being reminded that, or you're being shown that the people that are there at that seventh day service with you are the ones that are going to help you grow past this very difficult time. Right? And then the 49th day service, the ancient wisdom knew something. The ancient wisdom knew something. Modern psychological studies have found that the period 6 to 8 weeks after a spouse passes away is the most critical for remaining family members. A lot of times this is when suicides are committed. Right? And that 49th day period fits right in between, right? Right there, it's there. They knew that they needed help. By that time, by the 49th day time, you haven't found, you never get over the loss of somebody close. But by that time, if you haven't had the time to ability to find some kind of new balance developing in your life, you need help. And this is by getting the family members together every 7 days until the 49th day in the past. This is when everybody lived in village communities, so they could do that more easily. They were able to see how people were coping with that new reality. Now we don't have that ability to get together, as easily. So usually skip from the 7th day to the 49th day. But it was a process, right? And then one interesting thing I found that some parts of Japan, and therefore some parts of BCA and such, certain families will have a 35th day if the mother dies and the father is still alive, because they know that fathers are more likely to commit suicide than the mothers are after they lose their spouse. So they created that custom. I don't know where it really came from, but it makes sense. They catch it before it's too late. Catch it before it's too late. So a lot of the ancient wisdom, where they come up with those 7 sevens and stuff like that, nobody knows for sure. The 7 sevens. I've had people explain to me that 7 is the largest single-digit prime number. So what, kind of thing. But they do 7s in the Judeo-Christian tradition. They have the 7th son of a 7th son soul. And then you go to casinos, there's 7s. You line up 7s, you don't line up 8s, you don't line up 6s. It's 7s. Why? Nobody knows, but then it's part of that ancient tradition, right? Ancient wisdom for something or other. So anyway, yeah, age is a factor, but it's not just the numerical age that's important. Some people are, wise beyond their years. The way that we put it, and some people, and I think it's not a bad thing. They're a lot older, but they don't let things bother them. They don't harbor on bad thoughts, or anything like that. They just let it go. That's good too. Did I answer your question? Yeah, it is a process. Yes. Yes, Sensei.
My question is, how do you describe the difference between the Christian destiny or fate and Shikarashimu? Because what I was taught was that Jinen equal Honi equal Honganriki, the power of primal vow. Power of primal vow is Amida Buddha. So the working of Jinen Shikarashimu, naturalness, has a goal for me to be able to enter the other shore. So that's the purpose of Jinen. But here in this country, and then Japan also, sometimes people say, oh, this is unme, Can I help? We have to give up, or just like let go. But the working of Jinen has more something positive goal, or what's called the Amida's wisdom and compassion is there underneath. So the destiny and Shikarashimu, if this is your advice, I will be happy to hear.
Yeah. Well, on one hand, I feel I don't know enough about Christianity to say anything about destiny. I think most Christians don't know enough about Christianity to say much about it. I think we were talking about this yesterday. It was a joke. It was a joke, but one Christian minister told me this story about this man that was caught in a flood, and he was, waiting on top of his roof of his house as the waters were rising and rising. So first this boat comes by and says, come on, get in, get in. And he says, the guy answers, no, I'm okay. God will save me. And then later on, a helicopter comes by, says, come on, get, well, you need to get out because you're going to drown there. He said, no, I'm okay. God will save me. And then another bigger boat comes by and says, come on, you got to get out. You're going to drown. He says, no, I'm sure God is going to save me. Then he dies because he drowns. Then he goes up into heaven. He says, why didn't you save me? And God says, I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. I sent you that big boat. And you didn't, take that. So in many ways, what people think is destiny might be more than what we normally understand, in the Christian terminology. And if in that case, I don't think it's really much different from, the compassion of Amida working on my life. But we have to come to see it to really appreciate it, I don't ever really intend to change somebody from Christianity to Buddhism. I think there are a lot of common points, and I think we can learn from each other, continue learning from each other. One of the really interesting things I find that people dislike in general is confession, in Catholicism. But I think the way it's been bastardized, been changed around is bad. That admit you did something wrong, and then they say, so many Hail Marys, everything's going to be absolved. That's wrong, But being given an opportunity to think and reflect on what it is that you did wrong, how you might have hurt people, things like that. That's important. I think we have that in Jodo Shinshu as well, Azange, that kind of feeling. And it's important. So, just because things have been made to become something different from what it originally intended, doesn't mean it's bad, right? It doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, I think there's certain things within our tradition that we're doing that is against what Shinran Shonin would have been for, but that's one of the problems that we have. On one hand, we have the tool of the temple, the kyodan. It's important because it helps get the teachings to a lot of people. You can reach a lot more people than before. But at the same time, trying to keep that going keeps, keep that entity going, to keep the temple, the kyodan, all these things going, often keep you from actually teaching, right? Spreading the teaching, sharing the teaching with the people that you really want. It gives you a place, but at the same time, there's things that you hold back and you don't say because you don't want to upset people, or make them not give as much donation, to the temple and stuff like that. But, if you really, really want to spread the teachings, you don't worry about the tools. You don't really worry about the tools. One of the tools that I always wonder about is that, they always talk about having a uniform translation for a lot of things. But and go at it from so many different angles and develop a good translation eventually, some of the older translations of things I've come to appreciate more than some of the drier new translations that have come out, like Suzuki, since it's the Higashi Honganji translation of the Kyogyo Shinsho, he uses not practice, but he uses living, right? And that part is an important aspect. The practice part is important too, but then both the practice and the living need to come together. Like Gyo, the character we use for practice, refers to shugyo, the meditative religious practice, but also okonai. So what we do in our day-to-day lives is part of that as well. And especially for Jodo Shinshu, to open your eyes, what you do in your everyday life is important. So, yeah, basically my answer is, I really don't know Christianity well enough to say one way or the other, but I mean, I think a lot of times we take it for yes.
I have a question. Maybe this is not related with Jinen Honi, but I feel this is close to related to Jinen Honi. I met one of the billionaire when I went to mainland. He was a Buddhist. When he was driving the 2-ton truck, on the side his dad was there. This is about right after the World War II. He was driving, then he saw the little rock over there, but he couldn't turn the wheel. So the tire went to one of the rocks. Then the truck was turned over, flipped over. When he realized, when he opened eyes, he was at the hospital. His dad was very unconscious. And when he saw, his dad passed away. Buddhist minister came and he asked the Buddhist minister, why? Buddhist minister said, shikata ga nai, it cannot help. This is not I'm looking for. Then Christian minister came and said, let's pray. So he became a Christian. He was a strong Buddhist. He believed everything what he attended temple services. But the one word Buddhist minister say, can I help? Shikata ga nai. Yes, it's a can I help? The accident is an accident. But is that faith or any words we can apply? Is a destiny.
It's not destiny, but at the same time, I usually, depending on the situation, it could be different, but people go through life asking why. And I usually ask them, would knowing why change anything? Would that help? One of the worst situations that I ever had to do a service for was this man shot his wife, shot her, at that time boyfriend, killed his 2 children, and committed suicide. And one night I had to do the funeral for the father and the 2 children. And then the next night I had to do for the other man. The woman survived. And then, there was a lot of overlap in people coming to both services because they knew both people. And they were all filled with that, again, that question, why? Why did something like this? Why, especially for the man to kill his children? He said, we can go ask why and why and why, but, will it change anything? Does it change anything? The important part is to accept what is. Yes, on one side, you can say that the man didn't want his children to grow up as being children of murder. She didn't want to have them grow up with that stigma. So that's why he did this. But I don't know for sure. What he was really thinking, I don't know. But even if I did know, would it change anything? Right? So as far as like all that goes, to ask the why doesn't change the reality. Once you accept the reality, then you can grow from there. Then you can ask, how could I have kept something like this from happening? How can we make sure that nobody has to go through this type of thing again? You grow from there. But then, basically Christian ministers have that technique, let us pray, which is basically a good thing. And I think a lot of times they use that as a tool to buy time, to get their thoughts together. But, we're not supposed to do that, right? As we have prayers of thanksgiving, and such. But then at a time like that, when somebody you're close to dies, is that a prayer of thanksgiving? If you have somebody that's been listening all throughout their lives, you can say, you had all these years with that father. This is something that you need to appreciate and keep alive and vital. That he was taken away from you suddenly and in such a tragic way is, basically tragic, yeah. But with knowing why, change anything. This is a question, a thing that happened early on in my life as a student in Japan. Growing up in the United States, going through school and such, you constantly ask why, right? And then my instructor at that time, Yamada Meiji sensei, he says, he got tired of me asking why. And he said, why is not an acceptable question in Buddhism? So naturally, the first thing I asked is, why? And he said, why questions the reality? Why questions the reality? How did it come to be so is okay. Or something along those lines. But why does not work, because you have to accept the reality first. Then you can delve into it and try to find the causes and conditions that led to it. And if you can fix it later, some of those change causes and conditions, then that's okay. That's good. You can make it a force for a positive change. But just asking why at the beginning doesn't do any good, right? You have to see what's there before you can do anything about it. So that stuck with me because, the irony of the whole situation, being told why is not an acceptable question and just asking why, didn't come to me until